Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior and Community Center. I'm Reed Price. I'm the director of the center and hosting today's conversation with Grace Hensley. We're going to be talking about some lovely photos that have been on display, plus some extra material. The photos are up this month in the lobby at the Senior and Community Center. Drop by and look at them in person. I also want to start by thanking Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island for being a sponsor of Something to Talk About. They offer independent living and assisted living and memory care, and they'd love to give you a tour and treat you to a meal. Call Randy O'Neill or Sierra Wood at 206-594-1010 and do ask about their day stay and respite programs as well. Also, we live and spend our lives here in the ancestral homeland of the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water who have lived on the shores of the Salish Sea since time immemorial. So I would like to acknowledge them and uh, thank them for being such good teachers of how to be good stewards of these lands and waters. Grace, I also want to thank you for taking the time and putting together this program for us. I appreciate that, and I know that those of us who are on the call and watching it later will as well. So welcome, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say about your photos uh, from Heronswood, the intimate garden.
Thank you so much, Reed. I really appreciate it. And I've enjoyed participating in the Senior Center increasingly with the photo club. So thank you, Diane, for hosting it this year. And also, I've been enjoying attending some of the events with my father, who's 94. So it's a fun circle to close. Today, I'm going to be showing pictures of Heronswood, and I do want to also do the land acknowledgement as well, because Heronswood is now owned by the S'Klallam tribe, and we are very grateful for their ongoing caretaking of the site and helping us learn better plants to grow in the space. So let me share my presentation with you all, and I will get this going. So most of these images are taken at Heronswood, and they're largely taken with my good camera, but I do want to encourage people to bring their smartphones whenever you go out and about, because you will always see something that will tickle your fancy. And this talk is organized around helping you to focus your attention. So when you have a camera, it really helps you breathe and slow down and observe some of the quiet details and certainly the colorful abundance. Let's get this started. So my background is that I actually kind of grew up at Heronswood. This is my mother, Lynn Harrison, and she's been a longtime photographer who discovered Heronswood in the very early years and has historic images of the site as it's been developed and through its renaissance and regeneration. So I've had the opportunity from being a very small child, following my mother and learning how to see the garden and experience it, and then learn also how to construct these as small images through the camera. For those of you who are not familiar with Heronswood, this is a map of the location, and you would enter in the upper northwest, excuse me, northeast corner that's shown in green, and you would pass through the Renaissance Garden as you go down the driveway. And if you notice that first upper image, this is how this is started to fill in with thick, lush ferns and plants of the Pacific Northwest and beyond that give that evocative feel of the Pacific Northwest. And then as you travel through into the yellow parking section, this is going to be developed as more of a drylands garden in Eastern Washington. So you'll start to see that piece show a lot more of the rocky granite types of habitats in Washington State. And then as you go down in the map towards the blue area, this is the wonderful woodland garden that is just immersive and full of woodland treasures from China and Vietnam. There are hydrangea collections and many other kinds of collections like the mahonias that are in this woodland area. And then as you travel further south, you'll notice the section around the house, which is shown in red, and on the image on the right. And this is really where my heart starts to sing. You'll see the potager, which is a very stylized English garden with gorgeous color saturated borders that had been designed by Dwayne West. And then you'll see the areas around the house that are very intimate private garden types of spaces and the quad borders on the eastern corner of that picture. And so these are the spaces in this garden. And you'll see there's a section I haven't talked about yet that's in the light sage green. Those are the Travelers Garden area and the Sklallam Connections Gardens. And these are the newest sections of the gardens that are starting to be developed. And this will be the new entrance as the garden continues to mature. And so you will begin to experience the garden through the Sklallam peoples and onwards. So I encourage you to visit if you have not had a chance yet.
That's a wonderful overview. Thank you.
Thank you. So I looked at all of the images that I had printed and realized that my mission is really about teaching people to see. And when you experience this, and the section is in the woodland garden as you go down the original driveway, I want to teach you how to look at the overall wide view and then start to learn to focus your attention. So here are these wonderful columns by Little and Lewis, designers on Bainbridge Island. And at the base of them are growing this hellebore, which is Kingston cardinal, with this wonderful multi-filigree types of bracts that come down. And then if you look even closer, you can see the wonderful details inside the flower. So again, it's this trying to encourage you to enjoy the wider view and then slowly narrow your focus so you can enjoy some of these fine details. The themes you'll see in my pictures on the ledge is really about abundance. So rich colors, full planted scenes, things that are really called cramscaping in the garden literature, where everything's mushed together. So it's a lot of abundance. But then you'll also see quiet moments of intimacy, so that you can have resting moments and really introspective areas. And I also have a science layer on top of that, which is showing the ecology of the place. And so it's a little bit about understanding how plants grow and interact and how they emerge from the soil and then decay and senesce over winter. So a lot of that is really how I've experienced the garden through the seasons. And you'll see that there's going to be a lot of understated scenes and a lot of texture in my images. So I do want to point out that orientation matters when you are composing a scene for an image. And so this is a Berberis darwinii in the gravel section. And I'm showing you a horizontal view, which shows the arching stems and the new emerging red flowers that are just starting to pop open. But this particular shrub arches over the top and abundance and cascades down. And the better photo to take is the vertical one so that you capture the essence of the plant and how it behaves. So on the right, you'll see this vertical crop. It's a slightly different picture. I had to take a couple pictures during the walkthrough, but it was a way of looking at the overall view of the shrub and then focusing in on the details and seeing how the shrub behaves. I also want to encourage you when you are visiting gardens, and especially Heronswood, to think about what would look good in a magazine spread. And so this is like a two-page, you open up your magazine and you have all of this sumptuous view. And this is one of my favorite shots of the lower garden next to the house. I actually was standing up on the deck on one of the benches on the deck so I could get this top-down view. And you see the wonderful paving pattern as it moves through the garden and travels on to the right through the arch towards the wedding venue. And then you see these lush fingers of gardens that are protruding into the scene, and you can see your eye sort of moves around the scene as you would walk through the garden. And of course, dominating in the top left corner is a wonderful plant called Cornus cusa, which is this wonderful tiered dogwood with these gorgeous white blooms. And I wanted to share a picture from my mom's inventory that just shows these white bloom bracts in detail, and the gorgeous variegated foliage. So when you go and have a chance to see this in bloom, it's absolutely stunning. I also look for images that provide scale and context. So anytime you have a picture with a person in it, you get a sense of experiencing the garden yourself. You get to see how big the plants are. And then the context, and here my friend Sue has her own smartphone, and so she's enjoying the garden in her way. And then we have this concrete focal point of the empty container that anchors our view. And then we can see the curving path continue. So our eye is moving around an image, and then we have items in the image that help us focus our view and give things context. One of the themes that I love at Heronswood is abundance and color. And this is in the quad gardens several years ago when they had some containers and a large banana plant, and everything was sumptuously planted and perfectly in bloom. And I love the repetition of the different shades of purple in this border, and then the soft blue of the dianthus that's falling over the gravel path. And so you get this repetition of color and movement through the image. And so if you were ever designing your own gardens, this is something that works as well. This is repetition of the grasses and the colors to help move your eye through the image and through your garden. When I look at images and compose them either on my smartphone or on my heavy camera, a useful rule is to do the rule of thirds. And if you divide the image up into three equal sections horizontally and three equal sections vertically, you'll notice that the lines intersect. And this is often the most interesting part of an image where your eye wants to focus. And so here I have placed one of these three empty Celadon containers at one of those intersecting points. And I've also tried to make sure that the image is level. So even though you can see that that third pot is lower than that bisecting top line, it helps you get a sense of scale that it's further away. So as your eye moves through the image, you get a sense of how things are laid out in the garden.
Ah, yes, keeping the landscape level.
Keeping the landscape level, it's just one of the key things. The nice thing about our smartphones and photo editing software is that we can actually fix that. So if you're like me and I do a lot of spray and pray and I'm going click, 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 and I'm like, oh, really, that should have been a little bit more level, then I can fix that afterwards. And so here I would have gone right across the top of that front pot. Um, and then the other thing that works well with this image is that there are three objects in it. And so if you ever have a chance to have three leaves, three flowers, three pots, three things, it certainly will help anchor the image. And it doesn't have to be three, it can be five, sevens, nines. All of the rules of photography apply to the rules of garden design as well. I also like to look for leading lines in a garden as well as in an image. So here I have the lower garden near the house. The lower right-hand corner is anchored by the terracotta pot, and then in the center is the gray paving, and you can see it makes this lovely curving S shape off into the distance, and then the sumptuous plants just sort of curve and fall over onto that path and flow. And so all of the grasses that are moving there and the big plants that are definitely above your head would immerse you in the garden as you travel. So that's something that I try to include um, in my images as well as in garden design.
Yeah, and we talked about this last month with Paul Bryans taking us through the Grand Forest, the idea
Oh,
of using the trail as sort of a
yeah.
guide, an eye
Yes.
guide.
And my preference in most of my photos is to anchor something in the lower left-hand corner and then transfer your eye to the upper right. And this is quite common in Western photographers because we read from left to right. And so it's just how we as a culture tend to view scenes. And most of my photography will emphasize that lower left corner going up to the right. And it's just somehow instinctive in my photography. And I'm glad that Paul's doing the same. The other thing I see when I visit gardens is a lot of rhythm and repetition. And so again, here we have that lower left anchor point of the conifer, and then your eye travels to the right along the raised granite block edging, we have the quiet space of the lawn, and then we have all of the repetition of the Hakonikoa grasses as they cascade over and then continue. I think there's several, five, six, seven of these grasses. And so you can see that repetition. And then we also have the repetition of the conifers behind it. So it's just something that's giving the whole image some rhythm and repetition. Of course, I'd be remiss not to talk about the color wheel. You guys have all been to art school, so you know that the red and green, blue and yellow, and purple and orange complementary colors always make for pleasing images. And here at Heronswood, I showed the frog hiding in the dahlia, which is the red and green, and then the Troilus yellow flower peeking above the blue blooms. And I can't actually remember what plant that is. I should have written it down. And then the aster with a blurred background. This was actually a cosmos in the background that was screaming orange. And I deliberately faded the background so that we just got the color pop and the color contrast against the purple aster. So
That's
that was
beautiful
deliberate color use in this image.
and very convenient of the frog to show up in the dahlia for you.
Wasn't it though? And this thing is tiny and it was very quiet. Ross was leading a group of us through the gardens and I hadn't heard them. And he goes, "Oh, there's a frog, there's a frog, there's a frog." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness." He was so observant and so tuned into these frogs. And if he hadn't said anything, I would have missed them completely. So definitely taking time as using this photography to slow yourself down as you go through a garden and then look for these tiny little peeking frog details. Of course, you can also look for monochrome or high contrast types of opportunities. And here it was just the simple curl of the datura flower bloom against the sage green background leaves. And that's all I wanted to do was to capture that line and form. And of course, photography literally means drawing with light. And any opportunity you have to capture light on an object, you're going to really make the photograph just lighten up emotionally as well as literally. And so here, this was just a study of texture and a fleeting moment of sun rays through the woodland garden was highlighting the texture of the leaves. You can see them shining, so you know which ones are smooth. You can see other leaves have fuzzy texture, and then the fine filigree of the ferns. And so this is just a study of texture all caught by the light.
Yeah, this is a photo I could spend quite a while looking at because of all the different details, textures, and the sort of spotlight effect that the sun gave us there.
It was so lucky to see this. And this is probably one of the single most important images in my mind because I want to recreate this in my own garden. And it's such an ephemeral area of the garden, but it just pops up in spring, and then you have this wonderful green tapestry, and it's just so immersive for me. And again, light and texture, you can see the grasses moving, you can see the light filtering in from behind, and it just makes a wonderful dappled movement in an image when the grasses can move. I do a lot of plant portraits, and I tend not to take a picture of the center of the flower and just sort of looking at the naughty bits. I want to look at the plant in context, what's growing around it, how do we find this? And so this is this unusual Trillium, the volcano, and it's growing in front of a Douglas fir tree. And so you have this we know in the Pacific Northwest that these Douglas trees are so shady and so dry underneath it, and yet here we can have these layers of understory plants that grow and thrive. So I'm always looking for plant combinations and how they interact in real life, and not just a plant in a pot. And I'm also looking for form or edge and pattern and texture and all of these things in an image. And so here we have this Enkianthus that was in fall. And so the leaves had started to turn color. And all I wanted to capture was the toothed edges of the leaf to see how they made their own pattern. And I wanted to blur out the background and just capture this as a color wash and then the detail of the edges of the leaf.
And then you have that lovely sort of pink offset in your 1/3 of the photo that really brings out the teeth because it's just a little different. It makes your eyes start to wander.
Yes, and I could have centered the leaves and done it very analytically, and you would get the message that this is a leaf, it has toothed edges, and you can see that form very firmly, but it's sort of hitting you over the head with it. And so here I have these soft curves of the leaves to help you dance your eyes through the image. And there are other opportunities for you to experience texture in the garden. And so the decaying seed pod has little fine teeth in it as it opens up and turns dry, and you can see the interior form. Or the patterning on the Sarracenia in the pond area next to the house, and you can see that wonderful dappled reds and whites. Patterning that's quite interesting. And then just the simple, elegant form of a fern frond as it unravels. Those are all wonderful details to try to focus in on. And you notice in all three, or actually all four of these images, the background has gone quite soft. So it's opening up my aperture, and that will blur that background so that you can focus just on the foreground details. And again, I'm a scientist and botanist at heart. And so I'm always looking for um, details about the plant that makes it unique. And so here you have this clerodendron that is unusual because it's variegated, and you don't usually see that in a garden setting or even in the market. And so I love the variegation, the creamy white edges, the soft sage in between, and then the cooler green down the center of the leaf, and then these little pops of pink and purple as the blossoms are starting to emerge. So this plant is located up in the upper parking area, and it is scented, and it smells a little bit like peanut butter if you rub the leaves. And I know that the tribe will not mind if you go and you fondle the leaves a little bit and pick up that scent. Again, I'm looking for botanical accuracy. So like the Lobelia tupa, you can see how it curves, and the dewdrops that landed on the spider web. That's what I wanted to capture, just how the bloom just emerged from the stalk or the cypripedium. And you could see this wonderful globular pink purse-like pocket of the orchid down in the woodland. And this is hard to see unless you're really crouching down, but you can see into the flower. And then on the left, I have the Magnolia sapaensis, this white form, and then the red. Gosh, are they? I don't exactly remember the botanical part of this flower. That the red pieces have fallen down and landed in the cup of the flower, and really providing a lovely contrast to the dark green behind it. And then the Carpinus um, having these long tendrils of catkins against the edges, the denticular edges of, I don't know if that's the right term, of the leaves. You can see those sharp-toothed edge and then the long catkin. So I'm looking for um, how do I know what the plant is when I take a picture of it as well.
I'm stuck with my high school botany or whatever, stamens and pistils, so it must be one of those.
Mhm. I think so, and I really should have looked it up. Our
Anyway,
conversation.
pardon, Diane?
Oh, I have a question. On your close-ups, are you using a tripod in most cases, or?
You know, I don't. I shoot from the hip.
No, well, I have a hard time getting them to be sharp without it. I think maybe I've got a little shake to my, but anyway, they're really beautiful. And I
I,
also appreciate that you've included the botanical names. Not that I would ever read them, but it's nice. Thank you.
I'm such a nerd. I need to know what it is. And once you know what it is, then you can start looking it up and realizing cool, interesting facts about things.
And your
Um,
pictures are wonderfully sharp.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
think as I get older and my eyesight's failing, I'm realizing things aren't as sharp as I would like them. And so I am using my tripod a lot more. So
Yeah.
But fortunately, technology continues to move along
it
and
does
help
quite
us
a
out.
bit. And I do have that image stabilization on my camera, so that
Yeah.
helps. And then even with an
Yeah.
iPhone, gosh, the technology is improving considerably. Um, Again, I've talked about texture a lot. This is the cyclamen, this winter uh, flower that'll be pink or white, little dancing flowers just above it. But I loved the variegation and the texture on these leaves, and that the multi-tones of green was something that drew me to this. And I just a quick note, if you look on the little very left edge of this image, you'll see some pine needles and things. I tend to photograph as I see them and not clean them up. And so you will see some literature or some people who will talk on a YouTube about botanical photography, and they will clone out every pine needle, every snail nibble, every damage or, fungal spot, and make the flowers look pristine. And I don't care to do that. I like to see them as we get them.
You're not big on supermodel plants, eh?
No, I don't want, yeah, here I am calling my business fashion plants, but no, I don't go for models. And I'm always looking for combinations. So you have that rich texture on the tree, which I can't remember which tree this was, what kind of tree, the bark that we're looking at. But you see the crinkled edges of the filigree ivy. And that was something that caught my eye. It's just how your eye moves through the image and follows the tendrils of the ivy as it goes across the bark.
Yeah, another beautiful um, situation with lovely textures that interact.
Yes, and I'm looking for touchable textures. This is the Nigella, and you just want to squeeze it and find out what it's like. And I look for definitely color and blur the backgrounds here so you can see the texture of that Nigella foliage, and then against a creamy green background so that you can really focus on those details. If you described how I look for color in a garden or how I look for color in images, I would describe it as lickable. I want a true to life but saturated color. And I want you to sort of be able to dive into it and feel like it's creamy and lickable and warm and sumptuous without it being so over edited that it is crunchy or crispy. And so that's sort of the style that I go for. And I love the clematis on the right with this creamy pink and white into the silvery pear foliage. And so the light hitting this in the background was just one of the most dreamy, magical days in the garden. So this is a combination that I hope to be able to recreate in my own garden. So to conclude, I want you to look at the visual power of plants. What do you see? How does it make you feel? And using the camera to help focus where you look and how you enjoy the garden. So with that, I'll conclude. You can find me on Instagram as Grace_plants. You can email me or go to my website and see my other work. And this is a charming little Douglas squirrel that posed briefly for me.
Lovely.
Really outstanding presentation, Grace. Just very well organized, and I wondered what the hours are at Heronswood.
I believe it's 9 to 3 or 9 to, in winter time, it might be a little earlier. And then I think in the summer, it might be open until 4 or 5.
Okay. Yeah, I was out there, but it's been quite a number of years since I've been out there. So you've reminded me that this is definitely a place to go again.
Well, I would say that this is a world-class garden. And that is probably the highest praise I can give a garden. And I've traveled all over the United States and England, and this Heronswood truly is a world-class garden you have to visit.
Yeah.
This was a great advertisement for it.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well,
looked at my images, trying to figure out what is the story that I wanted to tell and how would I narrow it down instead of just sort of a random, hey, look at my Lightroom catalog and look at my favorite plants. I wanted to really tell the story of a place.
Well, you did indeed do that. Thank you.
yeah, and I think, you're starting off talking about how your mother helped
Mm.
you, I mean, introduced you to this through Heronswood. That's so sweet.
It really
Yeah.
was, and to be able to visit this over the years, and it's grown with me, and I have grown by visiting it.
Okay, so you said your last slide said F8, which is
And
some sort
be
of
there.
and be there, which is probably some sort of computer joke.
It's actually a photography joke.
Okay.
It was a quote from Ouija from in the 1960s, and somebody had asked him what's the best way to take a picture, and he's like, F8. Those are the settings that you put your camera on, and then you actually have to be there. Um, and because you're not taking a picture if you're not there. There is another quote that I have seen, and I can't remember who gave it, but it was, if you want to take a better picture, stand in front of more interesting things.
Hmm.
And this is my soapbox of go out in the winter, in the summer, in the early morning, in the blazing sun, whatever it is, and stand in front of interesting things and experience
However,
them.
I'm having a hard time picturing a Ouija in a garden.
Um, Well, this was his nickname, Weeegee, and
Mhm.
he was
No, but
quite,
he was a famous flashbulb photographer with
yeah,
a four
he
by
was quite
five
architectural.
camera. Yeah.
I don't think he met a flower.
Right.
Gangsters and murders and things like that were his
All
specials.
right. So that you have to be there for that.
Yeah, right, true.
And what's also interesting in this personal development of how I take photos is that I learned from my mother, and my mother learned from Imogen Cunningham. And so Imogen Cunningham is a contemporary of Ouija, and how we learned with our Rolleiflexes and our super crisp um, style, and how in present garden photography, the soft background is really trending. And you can see I've got some vintage cameras, and I really want to pull those out and bring back that F64 group style where it's super in focus from front all the way to the back. We don't do that anymore, and we need to.
Nice. And I even at the shorter focal length, I could see that, you had some pictures where everything that we were looking at was in focus. Some of like the bark and the ivy.
Yeah, and then the Nigella was a little tricky. It was a little soft on the edges, but those are the things that are winning awards in the International Garden Photographer of the Year contests. And so I'm hoping I can buck the trend and shift things to the more crisp images.
Well, Grace, I really appreciate the time you took to put this together. It's very informative, not only for Heronswood, but a little bit of suggestions for us who might be trying to do something with our smartphones,
Yes.
and uh, and just beautiful images. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I hope you all can come down to On the Ledge, and I'll give a quick plug that my images are for sale. First come, first served.
Okay. Thank you
Thank
all
you,
for attending.
Grace.
Yeah.